Hello, Santa. Let's move you over here for a little bit. There you go. We'll put you back a little later. Greetings. My name is Dan Sabo. I've decided to make a companion video to 4 other videos I uploaded earlier this year to YouTube pertaining to the psychotherapy trade in the state of Michigan and how really badly messed up the profession is. And I use myself as an example as to how badly clients can get harmed by ill-trained, incompetent, or just plain mean practitioners in the trade. Now, before I start, this is really a two-part, twofold video. It's partly about the psychotherapy trade and partly about using a website run by the federal government, National Institutes of Health. It's called PubMed.gov. And PubMed is a research database for any scientific research proving out, for example, drugs, surgical procedures, medical issues, and also mental health profession, including psychotherapy, any kind of psych medicines, what have you. Now, before I go into that, just to let you know, the 4 other companion videos I made, I'm going to share with you right now. These are the YouTube titles of those 4 videos. So if you want to check those out, just hit pause, type in those phrases into YouTube, and the 4 other videos I made earlier this year will come up. So let's just start by going to the research database, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to substantiate that the psychotherapy trade in general has been and is in a perpetual state of consumer fraud. And it has been for decades, really since the very beginning. And I'm going to use the federal government to substantiate that for you. I'm going to show you the tools I used to dig further into this and to show you how you can do your own research and prove it to yourself. So don't just believe me. So first of all, when you go to this website, PubMed.gov, you will probably get redirected to this page, okay? You could type this in if you want, but you'll end up in the right place. And I'm just going to give you a quick rundown as to exactly what PubMed is, and I'll use their definition. PubMed overview, this is right off of the National Library of Medicine, National Institutes of Health. And PubMed by the federal government is defined as a free resource supporting the search and retrieval of biomedical and life sciences literature with the aim of improving health both globally and personally. So it's a full database. And there is quite a bit of research regarding mental health treatments and also different forms, types of psychotherapy. And what I decided to do is, because it's such a broad subject, I honed in on one specific type of therapy for 2 reasons. I chose humanistic counseling or humanistic psychotherapy, mainly because when you go to the American Psychological Association, APA.org, well, go to Google first and type in the 5 major approaches or types of psychotherapy. This link will come up. So you can either type that in directly or search for it on Google, but it gives you a list of the major forms of psychotherapy practiced in the United States today. And of the 5 major forms or types or approaches of psychotherapy, humanistic therapy is on the list. It's what the American Psychological Association considers among the top 5 for most commonly practiced psychotherapies. And they define it as an approach that emphasizes people's capacity to make rational choices and develop to their maximum potential. Concern and respect for others are also important themes. Fine words, but you know what? theory and practice are often divergent, and as was my case, my experience many, many years ago with humanistic psychotherapy, humanistic counseling, was horrible, absolutely horrible. Now, I went into all of those details in the other 4 videos I brought up here. I'm not going to go into those now. If you're interested in finding out what my motives are for making these videos, take a look at those. And when I was introduced to it many years ago, Carl Rogers, anybody who's studying social work or psychology at a master's or PhD program, everybody knows who Carl Rogers is. He's one of the founders or creators of humanistic counseling or psychotherapy. And this is just off of Wikipedia. I'll just show you this very briefly. There's Carl Rogers. Okay. I'm sure he was a very nice man. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that the people who practice this type of therapy or the people who are licensed to do this and many other kinds of therapy are necessarily competent or skilled or even nice to people when ethical concerns arise. So just very briefly, he passed away in 1987. He was an American psychologist and among the founders of the humanistic approach or client-centered approach to psychology. Rogers is widely considered to be one of the founding fathers of psychotherapy research and was honored for his pioneering research with the award for Distinguished Scientific Contributions by the APA in 1956. Talk a lot about psychotherapy research here. Well, that's why I'm doing this video. So let's get started. I'm going to show you, by the way, I just print this out rather than doing a GUI demonstration on the computer because it's just easier for me and I like to take notes, write things down. So when you go to that PubMed website I showed you, it'll bring up a search page. Looks like this. It's a laser printer, sorry. But what you want to do is you want to click this link right here, the advanced search link. Okay? And what that will do is that will take you to this page. Now, this is basically a simplified regular expression search page where you can create your own regular expressions, and if you have any computer savvy, most computer geeks know what regular expressions are for search terms. You can use regular expressions in Google also, but I'll just give you a very basic rundown here. What you want to do is click the All Fields box right here, okay? And then when you do that, you're going to bring up a page. You're going to bring up a drop-down menu. You want to scroll down the drop-down menu, and you want to choose the title abstract link. And then that pops right in here, or title abstract search phrase. And what that is doing is that you can type in any search phrase you want in here. Say, for example, if you type in humanistic, it's going to search for any and all publications that have humanistic in the title and or abstract of the research paper or what have you. So it's going to bring up everything that shows you a paper that has humanistic in the title and or the abstract. Abstracts, it's like a very, very long title of a paper. It's like an expanded version of a title, basically. The simplest terms I can give you. So type in humanistic here, and you can do this for any search phrase. You can type in psychotherapy, or you can type in cognitive behavioral, or whatever, okay? So you type in humanistic there. And then you can also, once you type in humanistic, click add, and then type in, for example, well, in the first example I used, counseling. Okay, so when you type in your second search phrase in here, you're looking for 2 separate words in your title, humanistic and counseling. Click add, and it creates this regular expression in this box. That's your regular expression search phrase. And what this is doing is it's going to search for any and all research papers or whatever in the PubMed database that has humanistic counseling in the title, okay? And then once your regular expression is done, by the way, if you know how to punch these in manually, you can do that too. This kind of creates your regular expressions for you. Click search. And what that does is that brings up a list of all of the research papers that have both the word humanistic and counseling in either the title or the abstract or both. So, when I did that, and I was quite surprised, take a guess as to how many research papers come up. 14. 14. Now, keep in mind, humanistic counseling, that approach to psychotherapy, has been around since the 1950s. 1950s. And in that time, there have only been entered into the National Institutes of Health database studies pertaining to 14 different studies regarding humanistic counseling approach. Now, when you go through the list, a lot of this stuff, a lot of these studies don't even have anything to do with this garden variety counseling. Let's say, for example, if you're going in for depression issues or anxiety issues or what have you, that's one thing. But the 14 results that came up, most of them are due to medical counseling. For example, here's one on genetic testing, acupuncture. So what I did is I further refined this to get rid of the chaff, to get into the meat of it and find out how many studies have been done regarding humanistic counseling approach to depression or anxiety. So when I went back and recreated my regular expression, and you filter the results, 4 come up. 4 studies come up. Now keep in mind, humanistic counseling has been around since the 1950s. There are 4 studies. So do it yourself, confirm it. Typing humanistic and counseling in both the title and the abstract field. 3 of those studies are out of Great Britain, United Kingdom. Only 1 is out of America in 60 years. And that has to do with, I'll read the title, a randomized study to assess the impact of pharmacist counseling of employer-based health plan beneficiaries with diabetes. That's it. That's pretty piss poor. So what really upsets me, and I went on about this in the earlier video, is that you've got, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands of psychologists, social workers, licensed professional counselors, marriage and family therapists, whatever, practicing all different kinds of psychotherapy. And one of the top 5 most common approaches to psychotherapy, there's squat. There's nothing to show you, to show a potential client of mental health services. There's nothing to show you what's the efficacy. In other words, when you do a drug trial, say for example for an antidepressant, they're required to report everything. How many people were helped by a certain drug? Is it 50, 60, or 70%? And how many people were harmed by the drug? In hard numbers. You don't get that with a psychotherapy trade. And that's just awful. And this substantiates everything that I said in those other 4 videos about competency. It's not so much the individual practitioners, although that is a big part of the problem because many are just plain incompetent or rude or mean, and then they harm people. But it's the structural fraud the structural consumer fraud that has been built into the profession from the very beginning, because they're selling all of these products. They're selling you psychotherapy services, and there's almost no research to back up efficacy. Now try getting a drug approved by the FDA on this kind of horrible research. They'd laugh you out. So that's one of the issues. Now, when here's another example. Let's look at couples counseling, because that's another issue I talked about in the other 4 videos. If you create a regular expression phrase, as I indicated earlier, and search for the word couples and counseling in either or the title or the abstract, and one would assume if there's going to be a study about couples counseling, the word couples and counseling is going to be in the title and or abstract, because that's what the study is about. So when you type in this search phrase, I came up with 79 results. And now first of all, think of how many couples counselors or people that advertise or sell couples counseling services in this country. Probably tens, hundreds of thousands. I should probably do another video on that. But to have only 79 studies related to that. But here's the other issue. When you start reading the abstracts, titles regarding what the content is of the study, what they actually studied, many of these are about medical issues. Strictly medical issues. Like, for example, there are about 25 different studies done related to HIV or fertility, contraception, things like that, basic medical issues, which is an important subject. But if you're going to see a couples counselor or humanistic counselor or what have you, for relationship issues, depression, anxiety, and I guarantee you the vast majority of people that go into therapy, they're either having anxiety or depression issues or both. When you cut out the strictly medical aspects of the studies, you can cut the list in half. So what I did is I wrote a regular expression, and I will show that to you right here. I created a regular expression including couples and counseling in the title, and then if you're familiar with regular expressions, I'll just hold it up. When you put not in front of the parentheses, you can exclude keywords from the title and the abstract. For example, I excluded HIV because I'm not really interested in research on HIV, which is a medical issue. It's important, but doesn't apply in this discussion. I excluded contraceptive and HPV. There were a couple of studies related to human, I hope I pronounced right, papillomavirus or whatever it's called. When you do that, when you cut the wheat out from the chaff, I ended up with something like 39 results. 39 results. And then when you start really digging in and finding out what you have from there, okay, I tried to do that all in one take, but I couldn't. I usually can. But so when you start filtering your search results and exclude search terms that have nothing to do with what you're looking for, psychotherapy for just basic issues such as anxiety or depression or whatever. I whittled it down to 39 results, okay? And then I went through each one piece by piece. And then there's more to cut out, because here's one study regarding, well, for example, a very specific randomized trial of a relationship enhancement approach in improving marital intimacy in middle-aged Iranian couples. So this is kind of way too specific. Again, an important topic, but we're talking about psychotherapy as it's practiced in America. So that's one example. Or here's another title, an investigation into effectiveness of counseling on assisted reproductive techniques in Turkey. Or here's another one off the top of the list, Group counseling and cardiac rehabilitation effects on patient compliance. Or here's another study, the role of in vitro fertilization. So when you go through and cross out everything that doesn't apply, after I filtered the results for couples counseling and excluded the medical issues mainly, I came up with 2 studies, 2 in the National Institutes of Health database. That's it. And of those 2, one study, and I'll read the title to you, Changing Me, Changing Us, Relationship Quality and Collective Efficacy as Major Outcomes in Systemic Couple Therapy. This is a study that was done in Germany a couple of years ago. 43 couples. 43 couples. So, and that's what's frustrating, because I'm going to go on here. And here's another one. The only other 2 studies I found that applied to basic relationship issues, couples counseling, improving communication, whatever, even remotely close to that, was another study in Canada. Title is A Randomized Clinical Trial of Cognitive Marital Therapy. Canadian study, 30 years old, 33 couples. 33 damn couples. And you've got tens of thousands of people all over the country advertising couples counseling services. They don't have any research to back up efficacy on a large scale in America. Last one I found out of those 39 was one study in Norway titled Using Client Feedback to Improve Couple Therapy Outcomes, a Randomized Clinical Trial in a Naturalistic Setting. Norwegian study. That's it. Everything else is medically related. Don't believe me? Go to PubMed. Prove it yourself. So when you see this data and then look at the other videos, if you feel inclined, you're going to get a much clearer picture as to how, and I'm not going to say the whole word, but I'm going to use the F word and say how effed up the psychotherapy trade is in America. It's abysmal. And it makes me angry too, because that's fraud. Because you're selling products, you have no efficacy studies in large numbers to back up that your product works. It's okay if it doesn't work in a lot of people. What I'm saying is that when you do a study, when the pharmaceutical firms do a study, research for a drug trial, they have to report all the data, including how many people were helped, what percentage, and the negative or adverse outcomes or side effects of psychotherapy. And that is extremely lacking in the profession, and there are thousands of professionals all over the country that will admit the same thing. Just go into YouTube and type in bad therapy or bad psychotherapy or whatever. You'll find the practitioners themselves confirming everything. I'm a client, and here I am telling the profession that you're really screwed up. Okay. Now here's another issue. What I decided to do is add one word to my search term. I did the search phrase couples and counseling, and I added one word to that: depression. Now you would think that people who are doing couples counseling for depressed clients, depressed couples, and I guarantee you that's going to be an issue, because people don't run off to a therapist to see for no reason. I can guarantee you many, if not most of them, are depressed or have anxiety or some issue. So you type in couples, counseling, and depression as your search terms, looking for those 3 terms in either the title or the abstract or both. And I had 5 studies that came up. One was in 1983. And now keep in mind, 5 studies for a profession that has tens of thousands, if not more, practitioners in the field, for a field that's been around since the 1950s, as far as humanistic counseling is concerned, or couples counseling has been common. And of those 5, one of them deals with, I'll read the title, Resolution of Depression and Grief During the First Year After a Miscarriage. a randomized controlled clinical trial of couples-focused interventions. So again, here we go. We got medical issue. Here's a second one. Investigation into effectiveness of counseling on assisted reproductive techniques in Turkey. It's just a randomized clinical trial of cognitive marital therapy. That's a good one, I guess. 1990. And here's another one, a post-mastectomy. So, and when you actually do find a study, it's in some foreign country with maybe a few dozen, maybe 50 or 60 or maybe 100 patients. You know how many people are in drug trials? Hundreds, thousands, some cases tens of thousands. And this is all the measly meat that the psychotherapy industry provides the consumer to show that their product is safe and effective. And I think it's disgusting. So here's another issue. I did the same thing as the previous, only instead of using the word depression, I used the word anxiety. And then again, here we go. 5 studies popped up. One in Turkey, here's another one, HIV counseling and testing women's experiences in the perceived role of testing as a prevention strategy. Infertility in couples. I mean, here's one on cystic fibrosis. 5 studies relating to couples and counseling and anxiety. That's it. And that's just a sorry state of affairs. So interestingly, I thought, well, maybe I'm missing something, so I decided to type in the word Rogerian, R-O-G-E-R-I-A-N. That's what some professionals refer to as humanistic counseling. And it's kind of interesting. They're comparing cognitive therapy, which is another major form or branch or approach to psychotherapy. They're comparing cognitive therapy to Rogerian therapy. As a placebo, you can either use a placebo, like for example, if you're going to compare having psychotherapy to sitting in an office reading magazines. Sitting in an office reading magazines would be a placebo, and you have another group of people that are actually taking psychotherapy. So that would be one placebo, or a placebo could be a different form of treatment. But in this case, they're using a placebo that is very poorly researched to begin with, so that calls into question both forms, because if they're comparing this to something that's rarely been studied, this is bullshit. And I wanted to show you one thing, and I forgot to mention. When you do these regular expression searches, and this is important, you want to make sure that you click the randomized controlled trial box and nothing else. And the reason why is that the randomized controlled trial box, I'm going to show it to you right here. After you bring your search results up, you have a series of boxes here. You want to click randomized controlled trial. And that's really the only study that's valid to determine efficacy of psychotherapy or of any treatment, because you're using placebos and comparing the actual study group to a control group, and you can determine what the efficacy rate is of having therapy as opposed to not having therapy, or having therapy compared to some other form of therapy. You see other boxes here, like there's a box for meta-studies. If you click that box, it's going to bring up every study that mashes a whole bunch of studies together to try to draw conclusions from it. But the gold standard, you can't get drugs or surgical procedures approved by the FDA unless it's a gold standard randomized controlled trial with placebos. So that's important. You want to make sure you click that box. If you click all these boxes, a whole bunch of stuff is going to come up, including basically articles and opinion papers and what have you, or reviews or books and documents. You want randomized controlled trial. Okay, so when you do randomized controlled trial, these are the results you're going to get. Now, what's frustrating to me, when you compare the state of psychotherapy research to, for example, antidepressants, drug companies testing antidepressants, or there are dental procedures in PubMed. if a dentist comes up or a dental school comes up with a new procedure to do a root canal, they have to do trials and studies too to get that process approved. You can't get drugs or procedures approved without randomized controlled trials. How does the psychotherapy industry get away with that? I don't know, and that's why it's fraud. Because, and I'll say it again, if you're selling a product that has been untested and unproven, it shouldn't be allowed. It should be banned or outlawed until you have the data to back up how many people this helped, how many it hurt. If it only helped 50%, fine, just report that data and report how many people got harmed, so at least people know. But the thing is, the psychotherapy trade in general, they don't want clients to know how bad it can get. And if you look at the other videos, I brought up the one video I did back in June titled Psychotherapy Ethics, Better Industry Regulation Needed to Reduce Harm to Clients and Third Parties. That's another example of what I'm talking about here somewhat. So, for example, let's take a look at, let's compare the psychotherapy research to, for example, ketamine. Now, ketamine is an anesthesia, but recently in the past 10 years it's been used as a antidepressant with great effect. And I happen to be on taking ketamine infusion therapy to get over all of the crap that is in the previous 4 videos. And how many studies do you think have been done on ketamine in treating depression? The past 10 or 12 years. 170 studies have been done on ketamine to show efficacy of ketamine treating depression and anxiety, and it's even used for bipolar. So why should the psychotherapy trade, the mental health professions, be able to get away with this crap, selling unproven techniques, when the drug companies can't? It's wrong. So here's another example. I typed in, I'm going to read something off to you. L as in Larry, U as in under, AA21004. Now that's the descriptor for a fairly newly approved drug called vortioxetine or Trintellix. This is an antidepressant. This has been around for like 6 years. It's considered one of the better ones. 62 studies in the National Institutes of Health Library of Medicine on that one drug to show efficacy. 62 in just a few years, compared to a therapy technique that's been on the market for decades. Just a handful of studies, and all of them are inadequate. So, and incidentally, in my search, one article popped up. Actually, a couple did, but you can also search for articles that are not research studies. But I wanted to bring you to your attention to this. I just went to Google and I typed in psychotherapy research database, and a title came up in PubMed, and it's titled Psychotherapy Research, New Findings and Implications for Training and Practice. Now, this basically, if you go to the summary of the conclusion, this substantiates everything I talked about in those previous videos. And I'm going to read the end summary. Furthermore, consumers of psychotherapy are exposed to unbalanced and potentially misleading information about mental health treatment through the media. Providing users with research-based information about effective treatments for various disorders may influence the clinical practice in favorable directions. So the professionalism, this was written by, I'll just give you the name here, it was written by several people. It was written in 1998. And again, this is out of Norway. How come Americans don't do this kind of stuff? Good question, isn't it? The thing that frustrates me is that the scant little research and data about efficacy of psychotherapy that is available. The trade groups, American Psychological Association, National Association of Social Workers, there's a licensed professional counselor trade group. They all diagnose out of the DSM, which is a medical manual, to get insurance. They're all depending on research done in Northern Europe countries, Northern European countries largely. The United Kingdom, Denmark, Germany, there's a few Swiss, Norwegian studies. We're depending on the Europeans to do our research for us, and their research is scant as it is. And that's why it's just disgusting to me. So, and here's another thing. This came up, Quackery, a national scandal. Department of Public Health and Preventative Medicine, Loma Linda University School of Medicine, California. The U.S. Congress has determined quackery to be the most harmful consumer fraud against elderly people. Americans waste $27 billion annually on questionable health care, exceeding the amount spent on biomedical research. Now, this is a study that came out in 1992, when all of my trouble started with this crap. And lastly, another article popped up when I did a search on Google regarding research in the psychotherapy trade. And this is an article. It's not a research paper, but it's an article. This came out in 2010. The results underline the importance of differences between therapists as determinants of outcome in the treatment of depression. That's another problem. There are so many therapists in this country using so many untested forms of psychotherapy that have little, if any, randomized clinical trials with control groups. So you take the horrible research, or lack thereof, and combine it with therapists that don't know what the hell they're doing, and they use a mixed bag. They'll use 2 or 3 or 4 different approaches to psychotherapy on the same client. They haven't even figured out the individual efficacy rates of specific types of therapy, let alone mixing them all together. So it's wrong. It's just wrong. And yes, you know what? I am going to say shame on you, American Psychological Association. Shame on the National Association of Social Workers. Shame on all the professional organizations that allow this to happen. And if there is research readily available to the mental health consumer, where is it? Make it freely available. On the few studies that I was able to find that are not in this database, they're held closely by professional organizations or trade groups, and you have to actually pay 30, 40, 50 bucks to get the results of one study, which I found in several cases the results aren't very good. So what I'm suggesting, what I'm saying to the mental health profession, the psychotherapy industry specifically, clean up your damn act. Because why should somebody like me trust any of you? I don't. And I can never forgive what happened to myself and one I loved dearly many years ago. We're both in the hands of incompetent, 2 horrible, incompetent quacks. And I'm not going to go into that here because it just makes me upset. But if you want to learn about that, go to the other videos. But you guys really need to clean up your act, because you have permanently, forever, in my case, lost a customer. I will never, never try psychotherapy again, ever. So, food for thought, and I'm hoping that other people share their experiences too, because this has got to change. Because in my opinion, people shouldn't see a psychotherapist. The drugs are much better to alleviate depression and anxiety. Try them. Ketamine, it works great. 80% efficacy, according to some studies. Show me any kind of psychotherapy technique that has 80% efficacy and no side effects. They don't exist. And if there is one, please post a comment. And if you're a professional or whatever, and if you know one, Let me know. Post it in the comments section, because I've been looking for many, many years. I haven't found squat any good solution for mental health other than the drugs. Most of them don't work. I finally found one that does. It doesn't solve everything, but at least it makes life tolerable. Clean up your act. It's a mess. Your trade is a mess. And yes, I'm going to say it again. Shame on you. Shame on you, psychotherapists. You're selling untested products, and that makes me mad. So, how do you think I did, Santa Claus? Lastly, by the way, I forgot to include the date. It's December 8th, 2020. The election is over, and ho, 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 ho. Merry Christmas, and season's greetings to you all. Take care. Dan Sabo signing out.